Hey guys, Jill here. Welcome back to Whispering Willow Farm. We are going to do a full garden tour and I'm really excited. We vowed to take a few days off this weekend. It was my sweet Abby June's first birthday and Father's Day, all wrapped up in the same day, which was a really fun way to celebrate. But we kind of agreed to tell our kids this weekend farming is off limits. We are just gonna dedicate the weekend to hanging out with them. And as much fun as that was, it filled my mama's soul up. I missed the garden so much. At one point, I was like laying out in our living room floor and Nathan like kind of pouting, if I'm being honest. And Nathan was like, "What is wrong with you?" I was like, "I've not been in the garden in 2 days." And I came through and I walked, but it wasn't like my hands didn't get in the soil. So honestly, a lot of the things that I'm seeing tonight with you guys, I'm seeing for the first time because I haven't been out here in 2 days. And for me, that is nonsense. So let's get started. With that being said, there is a lot of things that have not been done in this garden that usually always gets done before garden tour. My pruning, my weeding, making the place just look as magical as it can. And honestly, that's not realistic. Most of the times it happens that way, but then there are the exceptions where things are just wild. And that is exactly what we're gonna see. I finally got the Brussels sprouts out, just in this bed. I still haven't gotten them out in the other bed. But look what I found. I forgot I'd even planted this pepper, but it was so huge because it had been hidden by the Brussels sprouts. So this is, I think, a sweet pepper variety. I don't even actually remember, but I'm hoping that it will just kind of thrive now that it has the space. This plant behind me looks awful. I mean, there's no good way to say it. I bought this start from a friend of mine, and I don't know what type of soil that they started it in. And I'm thinking maybe that had something to do with it because it wasn't just a super strong transplant, but all of my leaves are looking like this. It's not healthy, and I've pruned just about everything I can prune. Now there are a few clusters at the top, but it's not worth it to me to keep this plant in here if it has some sort of disease that it could spread to the other plants. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and rip this one out, which stinks because I've got this mature one behind me. And then, I don't know, stick something here. It's this is a sun gold. I've had so many issues with this, which stinks because it was my first year growing it. And I have had so many people recommend it to me. My friend that started these, her sun golds look great. So I don't know if it's something that's not meshing with my soil. I don't know why this plant in particular is doing crappy when the rest of them are doing well. Look at those clusters. Wow, this is the pink bumblebee. And you can see all the fruit starting to set up here as well. The blossoms are coming out. I cannot wait. These are by far my favorite tomato, cherry tomato. One of my favorites. Our Brad's Atomic Grape are really starting to come on nicely. Look at that. Oh my gosh, y'all. It's just gonna be a few days and we're gonna be there. Look at all that cluster. Yes, this plant is doing beautifully. As you can see, they're really starting to get those purple tones to them. These are stunning just to look at and honestly to eat. They're definitely some of our favorites. Check out that beauty. This is the red Brandywine. The plant's doing really well. There is some yellowing, but we got a lot of rain and it's super humid, so this doesn't make me fear that this plant is gonna have some sort of disease. Like, this is pretty typical. This I'm okay with. That down there, it obviously looks like it's getting attacked by something. But here's some nice good fruit down here. We're starting to set some more fruit right up here. Man, so y'all remember, oh, that one's got some, looks like it was some cat facing maybe. So you remember I planted this really late actually, and so it's got that fruit down there on it. Then it's already got these setting up here. So this plant looks healthy. It's doing great. And honestly, like, compared like side by side, this plant versus this one's not that much taller than these two, even though I planted them much later. I also already have so much pollen and tomato fingers. and I didn't even do much work. My cucumber trellis is really taking off, and I just went through and was trying to vine some of them up the trellis, and I found something. It's like the first cucumber of the season is the best cucumber of the season. This is the Tokyo Green. Now, my first year growing these, my intentions for these were to juice them. I do want to try them just, you know, plain and see how I like them with some salt and stuff. But the main reason why I grew these is these are the type that I have to buy at the store when I juice, and I got tired of having to buy at the store, so I thought I would just go ahead and grow some like these. Now, I did also do the Boston pickling because we pickle a lot, and I found one of those right too, so I'm gonna go ahead and grab. I know there's gonna be a point in the season where I have literally juiced all the cucumbers, pickled all the cucumbers that I want to, that I'm not gonna get as giddy when I see one of those on the trellis, so I really need to soak in moments like these. This is the Armenian cucumber variety, and granted, it is growing well, but it is taking so much longer than the Tokyo Green or the Boston pickling, and I've heard that this variety is just one of those that takes a bit longer to get started and going. So compared to when y'all seen it last, it has grown, but this one, it's just taking a while. Thankfully though, these lasted way longer than my other cucumbers throughout the season, and I'm not sure if that's because they're actually like a part of the melon family. I think that they were just able to withstand the heat better. But I'm hoping that even though they're getting a later start, I'll have them longer in the season. One of the cool things about not having been out here in a few days is one of my tomato plants shot off another tomato plant at the very bottom of it, and it was pretty good and established. So I went in and popped that thing in water and stuck it in the windowsill for a few days and gonna let it root down. And then when I tear up that one Sun Gold Select tomato plant that isn't doing very good, I'm gonna stick that one in its place and see what'll happen. Our zinnias are coming up real nice. These down here are actually really big. I feel like all the rain that we've been having has really just done these things some good. I finally ripped up the chart. As you can see, the base of 2 is still in there. So I'll go through tomorrow and just finally finish sowing. The ones that I just sowed last week are starting to pop up. And then I'll go ahead and sow some more. And hopefully I'll just have a huge bed of zinnias soon. Starting to see some things on there. Oh, that's a nice size tomato. I'm not seeing any fruit on this one yet, but these were planted at the exact same time, so I'm hoping that it won't be very long and I'll start seeing this one have some goodies on it too. Y'all, I have had to look at this huge Tromboncino squash every single day. So that is our bedroom window, and it is like direct view right here. And Nathan keeps asking me every day, when are you gonna pick that Tromboncino squash? When are you gonna pick that Tromboncino squash? And I'm like, I am waiting for the garden tour. So garden tour day is finally here. We are so ecstatic. As you can see, I have got Tromboncino squash out the wazoo. This arch trellis is just beautiful. It's absolutely my favorite part of the garden. I mean, look at this. This is wild. So we're about to cut this bad boy down and just see how big it actually is. My word. This thing is huge. Wow. This is great. So this is the first squash that I've harvested off of here. As you guys can see, there are plenty more. Wow, that's so awesome. Grow yourself a Tromboncino squash. You will not be disappointed. They honestly are just everywhere at this point. Look at that though. Isn't it just a dreamy little setting? They just climb over so nicely. We've got, I mean, they're just everywhere. They're coming out of the woodworks. These peppers are starting to do really well and sit. Lots of little peppers on here, actually. I wish I knew what varieties these were because they look absolutely beautiful. They kind of look like the Berkey tie-dye, maybe, like what they would look like. I don't know. I wish I remembered what variety this was, honestly. Y'all, I don't know if you can see this. Do you see this? I have actually got corn. Now I grow a lot of things, right? But for some reason, I just didn't think this corn was gonna do anything. I knew the people in my area had sown corn way before me, so I kept thinking I got a late start. I don't even know if they'll germinate. Honestly, didn't even know how old my seeds were. So to see these little corn babies popping up is like, oh my gosh, I grew that. I mean, I might not actually grow an actual ear of corn, but at least I got the seeds to germinate. I am a firm believer to be a gardener, a farmer, a grower on any type of scale, you have to thoroughly love what you do. For me, I have been growing for 8 or 9 years now. I have continuously upscaled that, but I seriously come out here and get this giddy over stuff all the time. So I'm literally just so stoked that this corn popped up. One, it's just like the cutest thing I've ever seen. And two, like, I grew that. And I know that that might even seem silly to some people because, I mean, I sell my produce, like I grow a lot of things. But I think it's believing in myself and the things that I don't know about and knowing, I feel like this is what a first-time gardener would feel like. Someone who's never grown tomatoes before, growing tomatoes and then actually like harvesting tomatoes. I just envision them being like, oh my gosh, did you see that tomato I grew? That's kind of how I feel with like anytime I grow something new that I've never grown before. I'm like, oh my gosh, I did it. For me, I could like grow tomatoes in my sleep. Like it's just something I've grown year after year. I feel comfortable with it. I know when something's attacking it, what I need to do. Like I'm always learning, but I feel comfortable with that crop. Something like corn that I've never grown before and I don't know a single thing. Honestly, I didn't even do any research. I was just like, had Nathan behind me and I was like, okay, yes, let's do it. So it's just so exciting. So exciting seeing something like this, and it makes me always think this has got to be what a first-time grower feels like, and I hope that I always grow something that makes me feel as giddy as this corn right now. I wish y'all could smell this and just really see how beautiful and blue these are. I love having these, they're magnificent. I've actually got an arrangement on my table that Peyton came out and picked for me, and it's just so beautiful. And I love that my girls can just come out here and pick these flowers and make arrangements. It just makes me so happy. Before I show you guys another one of my, I think every place I go to in the garden, I'm like, oh, that's my favorite place. And then I go to the next part and I'm like, oh, that's my favorite place. Actually, this probably is. I don't know. It's a toss-up between the bean tunnel and the Tromboncino tunnel. Which one's my favorite? But before we dive into all the goodness here, I just want to comment on something that I get asked a lot. You guys know I want to be super transparent with you guys. Any questions you guys ask, I want to answer them and just be authentic. That is really, really important to me. I get asked a lot about my railroad ties. I get asked, aren't they toxic? Aren't they poisonous? I can't believe you grow in those. So I'm just gonna lay it all out there for you guys because it keeps getting brought up in all my garden tours. So I'm just gonna be completely honest with you guys. When we lived on our property before here, we built our beds out of just untreated lumber. It might have even been treated lumber now that I think about it. And they were just thrown together beds and they worked for what we did, but we really wanted to upscale when we moved here. So Nathan's dad does like lots of handyman work, and he called us one day and said, hey, someone is getting rid of all these railroad ties for free if you just come and get them. Do you want them? And we thought, well, yeah, we know how expensive those are. Nathan's worked at the farmer's co-op. He had worked there for years and years. So he was like, well, yeah, we can make, you know, raised beds out of those. Back then, and I say back then like it was a long time ago, 2.5 years ago, I didn't know half of the things that I know now. 2.5 years ago, I was a backyard gardener. We didn't sell to anyone. We just did it for our family. I was still just really getting into the gardening scene, getting connected with gardeners on Instagram and YouTube. So it was all still, even though I'd grown for years and I'd grown for my family, that was still new to me. So we did it. No one had said anything about it. I didn't even realize that it was a thing. Then someone came over and had mentioned the creosote, and I was like, oh, I guess I didn't really think about that. Now, for most of our beds, and I know that they are all like treated in it, but the part that there's like, it's visible, all of that, most of ours didn't have any of the visible creosote on them, and the ones that did, we placed those down in the dirt. So none of our plants are actually touching anything that's gonna get that tar on you or is going to be, you know, damage to our plants. Now, they can be toxic, yes. I mean, the fact that, I mean, they could. I don't really know a good way to say that. Like, my food isn't toxic, but these aren't the best route to go, and I know that now. As I've looked into being certified organic and being certified naturally grown, I realize now that these are things I can't do. So if we ever certify our farm, we could never grow one of these. If we ever got a grant through the USDA, we can never put any railroad ties in our high tunnels. It has to be all untreated lumber. So these are things that I didn't intentionally think, oh, I'm gonna do this and it's gonna potentially be harmful to my plants. That was never you know, something that crossed my mind. I honestly didn't know. I thought, oh, these are free. We're gonna be out all this money remodeling our house. This is a way we can save money in the garden. So I did not know these things whenever I purchased them. Now, doing a lot more research and things like that, I realized this was not the best option. Honestly, we've just invested way too much time and energy into it to rip them out and do something new. It is something that I'm always looking. I make sure, you know, if there is any visible signs of tar, that I'm not planting something close to it. Thankfully, for ours, most of them just look like this. Like, you can't, there's nothing on it that's gonna damage a plant. So it's something that I've not really been really worried with, but I do not recommend these if you're trying to be certified organic, certified naturally grown. You just won't get certified. This is something that they are just not okay with and they will not approve. So I did just want to mention that and talk about it. It was something that, a rookie mistake, I just didn't know any better. So now that that's addressed, if y'all have any more questions, I'll be happy to answer them, but I did want to talk about it. So enough of that, let's talk about these beans. I finally have my first set of noodle beans, and they're actually from plants that Charlie had dropped, and they're just growing in the walkway. These are way too long for what I prefer, and they probably got too big, honestly, just in the few days that I wasn't out in the garden. So, I don't know. I mean, I can still saute these up and they'll be okay, but I prefer to pick them when they're just a bit smaller. I mean, really though, isn't it just so dreamy? I remember last year I had just had June and all these noodle beans were just hanging down. I was just standing right in the middle of it. It was just such a place of refuge after having her. It was just a place I could come to and chill. It's just beautiful. I am so glad that you guys kept telling me just to move the dirt out from around my onions and that they would just keep getting bigger. So I went through and did that to all of mine, and sure enough, they just keep getting bigger and bigger. Who knew? Again, something I've never grown before that I am trying out for the first time, taking a lot of your guys' advice on what I need to do, and yeah, they're looking great. I mean, this one right here is like just really good. But ever since I started moving the dirt around, this one is getting a lot bigger. This one down here is also getting a lot bigger. So yeah, they're just doing really well. Oh my gosh, I have so much like pruning and trellising to do on these tomatoes. Let's just see a little. Look how tall they are already. Granted, I'm standing in a bed, but suckers, so many suckers. These things will get you. Also need to be looking pretty close. Some of my friends have started to have hornworms, so I'm like, oh man, now I need to come out and start checking for hornworms. They're all looking good. I found some really big fruit. I'll show you guys in a second. So most of my tomato plants over here are looking great. I've got big clusters of fruit on them. They look great. They're like big established fruit too, so I feel like within the next couple weeks that they're gonna start turning, which thank you Jesus, I've been waiting for the day for these tomatoes to turn the perfect color. But the only obvious problem I am having is aphids. This is something that I am battling more this year than I ever have in years past, and in particular this bed. So this bed we got the soil to amend it, or actually no, we had built this bed later, and we had gotten all of the soil from a cotton farmer, and it had a lot of cotton holes in it, which had a lot of nitrogen in it. And my friend Jess was sending me a video because our soils are pretty much the same. She was like, I'm pretty sure we have a high nitrogen level. So after her doing research and myself doing research, I've come to find out that wood chips and pine shavings help bring down the nitrogen level in your soil. Now, I use pine shavings for mulch. However, fixing the nitrogen in your soil is a very slow going process. So I keep coming out here with safer soap, and I'm doing that maybe, I don't know, once a week at this point. With all the rain that we're having, I will definitely have to be doing it more often just because it gets washed off a lot. And I'm gonna just keep doing that, but I don't really have another solution just because there is no quick fix to fix nitrogen in your soil. Now, I am going to take a soil sample of this and take it to my local extension office just so they can pinpoint exactly to try to help me figure out. And that's another thing I recommend you guys do. If y'all are having any issues with your soil, get a soil test, figure out exactly what it is that it needs. That way you know exactly how to fix it. Check out these giant Belgiums. These are one of my favorite red slicers to grow last year, and they performed really, really well. I mean, I had several large fruit, and as you can see, these are already some pretty large tomatoes. My Cherokee purples are doing well. Here are some more Dr. Witchy. This is my favorite yellow slicer. These get a pretty good size too, so I'm glad I put several of these in the garden this year. So here is that pink tie-dye, which makes me believe that this is that one in that other bed, because look, they look very, very similar, and I hope so. I've heard wonderful things about these. I've never grown them, but I was really encouraged to grow these this year. So I hope that they do really well and that I like them. These cucamelons, I was warned, I will say, I was warned that the cucamelons go crazy. However, I thought that if I put the cucamelons on my cattle panel, that they would just climb the panel, and they really don't. And I saw one of my friends, she kind of made a teepee, and they did a lot better on the teepee, because as you can see, they just go every which direction. These things are just like crazy animals, really. I've never seen anything like it. As you can see down here, they're getting just bushy. I'm just mainly trying to keep them away from my tomato plants because I thought that they would just trellis this up, you know, really nicely, and they haven't. But we came out and picked some the other night for the kids. It tastes just like a watermelon. Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. They are quite literally everywhere now. It's so great. Y'all know I cannot spend much time in this bed. This is with the crazy non-pruned tomato plants. My Kellogg's breakfast back here is actually doing really good. There's a good cluster of fruit down here. The other ones are setting off a lot of blooms, but aren't putting off any fruit, which makes me think, is that because the plant is spending more time on all these other suckers and side shoots and all these things that could potentially be a plant that is not focusing on the blooms to turn them into fruit. So for me, these are all things I'm jotting down, but right now they're definitely not producing the way the ones that I pruned are producing. This is the Kellogg's breakfast that actually does have some on there, but none of the other ones do. I've just got these little clusters of blooms and then nothing else. So I swear this thing grows so much every day. I literally can't even see the top of it. So I don't. Anybody tired of squash and zucchini yet? I have been selling a lot of this. Thank goodness I have a buyer, because you can honestly, we eat a lot of squash and zucchini, but we don't eat a lot of like squash casseroles, which is what I would can them for, because they're gonna be a little bit mushier and I don't have a problem eating that in a squash casserole. But other than that, you pretty much have to just eat them fresh. So I have been fortunate enough to be able to harvest off of here several times a week and sell everything from here. These plants are doing really, really good. There's one in the back that I'll show you that I'm gonna go ahead and rip out because it's just not looking that great. There's a zucchini. there's a zucchini. If you guys remember, this was actually the plant that there was two little sprouts, and I had let them grow together because honestly I just forgot to separate them, and they became very, very compacted. Nathan went through and tried to prune them, and I think it kind of stunted them more than anything. I've only gotten one zucchini off of here, and it just looks so bad that I'm just gonna rip it up. Squash and zucchini grow so fast that if you have a diseased plant or something that's just not looking good, you have the liberty of just ripping it up, direct sowing another one, and it will pop up. And all the ones in the middle that I planted late are finally starting to produce. So I'm not really worried about it. I'm gonna rip it up, sow something. It'll probably be sprouted within a week and be putting off fruit really, really soon. Look at these. Aren't these beautiful? I have loved growing these. They have put off a nice little mess, not near as productive as the ones in my tunnel over there. And I think it's just the variety. I don't think that these varieties are, you know, are supposed to be putting off a ton of fruit. But I really didn't mind. The kids enjoy it. They think it's fun. It's also fun to sell these too. So what I have been doing is doing my bags of green beans and then adding some of these in. And I've noticed that I get asked a lot of questions about these. So for me, it's nice to be able to show someone a different variety that maybe they weren't familiar with. It's a nice little mess of beans. Sweet Lord Jesus. Do you guys see this? Oh my gosh, I think it's ripe. There are so many blueberries starting to get their colors, you guys. Yes. You guys know I love coming out here and checking these often, just because I cannot wait to have blueberries. Oh my word, look how huge that one is. Wow. That makes me so excited. Blueberries are one of those things that I will do once or twice in the summer, a you-pick where I let some friends come out and pick, but primarily we save all the blueberries for us. We freeze a lot of them, we make kombucha with a lot of them. The kids just really enjoy the snack, so that's one of those things that I actually really like just having, knowing that I don't have to worry about selling it. We also have a ton of muscadines starting to put on their little fruits. Look at these nasturtiums. Aren't they beautiful? I went through and planted a bunch of these just in the corners of my beds, and some of them are doing better than others, but this one in particular I just really noticed starting to take off. I dreamed of having an herb garden this year, and it honestly just didn't happen. With Tula getting in my beds, I planted the herb bed several times, and it did not work out in my favor. So I just went through and planted a ton of flowers, mainly nasturtiums. I planted every single variety of nasturtiums that I owned. They're starting to come up beautifully. I have so many weeds that I need to just pick and clean out. So it may make your heart pulse a little bit seeing all the weeds, but I'm gonna show them to you anyways. Also have these two sunflowers that I planted, and it's getting pretty tall. This one's getting pretty tall too. So I just need to go through and weed all this out, and I think the nasturtiums will do a lot better. All right, you guys, that wraps up what is going on in our backyard garden. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. Thank you guys for encouraging me to grow. I love to grow, but knowing how exciting it makes you guys just gets me amped up even more. So thank you guys so much for following along with our journey and for viewing my garden with me tonight. I'll talk to you soon.